we do have a couple of families who are unable to attend, and they asked me to make a recording this evening so they could get the information. So we do have a school YouTube channel. Those of you guys who do that, it's more mine, I guess, since I kind of post most of the stuff, but just Mr. Fry LCA, if you're a YouTube person, if you follow that, you'll get anytime we have a school activity, you'll be notified if you want to subscribe to that. Some of them may apply to your children. A lot of them are the older ones when they have programs and things, but we try to post everything we legally can on YouTube. So parents who can't come can enjoy that. But we'll be doing that this evening. I'll send a link out as soon as it's active for families who aren't able to be here. So yeah, Andrew, is anyone else out in the hall? Okay. Well, let's go ahead. More people will be coming in, I'm sure. But good evening. Welcome to Latham Bible Baptist Church's educational ministry, Latham Christian Academy. We are so glad that you are a part of this coming year. And as we say, go ahead and have a seat, and we will get started. I do try to do my best when we have activities to start as close as possible on time. Your time is valuable to me as well. I want to protect that. So we will get started here. Let's go ahead and have a word of prayer as we start out together and ask God's blessing on our time. Our dear Lord, thank you so much for Latham Christian Academy and for the privilege of being a part of this. Lord, thank you for each of these families and for the young people that you have directed to be here this year. We ask your blessing on all that's said and done tonight, as well as throughout the coming school year. We ask for your physical protection, for safety, and we ask for good success in the classrooms as these young people start their educational journey and begin learning so many important life lessons. Lord, we ask that you would be honored and glorified. In Jesus' name, amen. All right, well, let me go ahead and just get started with some introductions. Some people that are here this evening with us. First of all, my name is Brian Fry. I am the school administrator. This is my 5th year at Latham Christian Academy. I am really consider it a huge privilege to be here and be a part of this ministry. Most emails you get will probably come from me, or they may say Latham Christian Academy on it, but if you look at the header, it'll have my email address. I do a lot with that kind of communication. I oversee the school ministry. Hopefully none of you would get behind on your bill, but you'd hear from Mrs. Kettle Wood, and then for me, if that happens, I have to keep up with some of the financial. I'm responsible to the school board for those areas. But again, I'm so glad that you're a part of the ministry. Let me introduce you now to a few of the other people that are here with us. I don't really know what order this is in, but I'm going to start with Mrs. Sarah Fischel, if you would stand. Mrs. Fischel is the aide in the K-3 classroom, and she also works in our extended session program, so you might be seeing her a little bit in the afternoons. And just a note tonight, Mrs. Mansfield is not able to be with you. I know some of you K-3 families she already met with, or she will be. She is returning tonight from bringing her son to college in West Virginia. So she will be back with us tomorrow, but she is not able to be here this evening. So if there are any K-3 families here who have questions, Mrs. Fischel is the one to see tonight. And do you have things set up for them to put in the bins in the hallway for those? In the class. Oh, do we sure we want to do that? Where's Mrs. Mean? Right here. Do you want to hallway? Yeah. I think that's so. I'll get you a chance to be out there. Next, Mrs. Deb Rourke, if you would stand. We appreciate Mrs. Rourke. She has a lot of hats this year, but primarily she is an extended session. You'll see her in she drew the short straw, I guess. We'll be here till 5:30 each afternoon. So you'll see her if your children stay in the later extended session. She also will be doing PE for the K4 students. So if your child's in K4, they'll be having her as their PE teacher. We'll talk in a minute. She also is a volunteer who helps with our school banking program, and I'll talk to you more about that in a few minutes. So that's Mrs. Rourke. We're so glad to have her a part of our ministry as well. Next, I'll introduce my wife, Mrs. Dee Fry, if you would stand. She also helps in our extended session and does a little bit at lunchtime aiding as well, but she is an aide for the extended session as well. I mentioned Mrs. Mansfield, who isn't with us tonight. She is the lead teacher for K3, the head teacher there. Then Mrs. Jennifer Greaves, if you would stand. Oh, I kind of went out of order, didn't I? I went K4B first. But Mrs. Greaves is our K4 teacher, and she also helps with extended session as well. This year, not till 5:30. If you've been here in the past and expecting her here, she gets to leave at 4 this year. So we're glad for that for her. Then Mrs. Sheila Urban is our other K4 teacher. And again, excited to have her with us. She also helps with extended session. And then lastly, but certainly not least, let me introduce one you have already met. This is Mrs. Betty Mean. You can stand if you want. Let them see you. There you go. But I think most of you have met her as part of the interview process. We appreciate her, again, starting her 31st year this year at Latham Christian Academy. We appreciate her faithfulness. All right, well, let me go through a few announcements now. Now, there's a lot. Let me tell you a little bit tonight. I know it's like the proverbial taking a drink from a fire hydrant. Okay, it's hard to understand and get everything together. I'm going to give you a lot, but you have time to get used to and adjust to these things. The first and most important thing is the first day of school is next Wednesday. We want to get that out right away. Wednesday, September 3rd. That is the earliest school could ever start in September. So next year we're going to jump ahead. I haven't looked at it yet, but my guess is it'll be something like the 8th or the 9th next year. But we'll have to look ahead because this is we start the Wednesday after Labor Day. So the 3rd is the earliest it could ever start. Now, one note about the first day, especially if your child was not here last year, I understand there's a temptation to want to linger in the classrooms. There's a thing when you walk away and your child starts crying that you want to go back and help your child. Let me tell you a couple things about it. First of all, our classrooms aren't big enough for every family to stay there. Secondly, I promise you, and you back me up here, kindergarten teachers, your child is only going to cry for about a minute. Your child will stop crying after that and will start playing with the new friends, the new toys, and all of that. If for some reason your child does not stop crying, we will call you. We'll let you know. I appreciate our teachers. They've been doing this a long time. We have very faithful teachers and workers here. We worked with children. We love children. We will make sure your children are taken care of. So if there is a problem, we will let you know. I encourage you on the first day, bring them to the classroom, give them a hug, and then go back to your car, even if they're crying as you leave. They will stop, I promise, as they get used to their new friends and everything in the classroom. So I appreciate it if we can do that. It makes the first day go a lot better. Our parking lot is going to be packed the first day. I'm going to talk about the parking lot in a minute. So the sooner we keep people moving, the better everything is going to go that morning. We will have some extra assistance in that day to help as well, some other people helping that morning. Just a quick note about a tool we use called Sycamore. Most of you should have received an email from me. I don't know if it says my name on it, but it's called a welcome message. It contains a link for you to go to, a username, which is the first 3 letters of your last name followed by a 4-digit number, somewhat random, I think, and then this really bizarre starter password. The first thing you want to do is change your password when you get into something you can remember. I mean, these starter passwords have like parentheses and asterisks and exclamation points and just nut stuff in it. But you might even copy and paste when you get in. This is a system we really use primarily for our older grades, but it's available for you all as well. And there can be some good tools there. Everything from our lunch menu is there. You can check on your school statement. Our teachers can post things, everything from snack menus, and snack assignments. They can post assignments. They can send emails. You communicate with the teachers through that. If you have any questions or problems, though, send me off an email. Again, all of you have seen my email, simply bfry@lcany.org. You've all gotten something from me. If you haven't, by the way, see Mrs. Kettle Wood, because we don't have your email address right. If you're not getting something, you should have received multiple emails from me already over the last few weeks, including one yesterday. So again, if you didn't get one, see Mrs. Kettle Wood, be sure we have your email address right. But if you have any questions about Sycamore, I'm kind of the point person on that as well. Shoot me off an email and I'll solve any problems you have there, I hope. I mentioned before payments. Please remember, payments are due by the 10th of each month. Mrs. Kettlewood is here this evening, and I should have introduced her, I guess, and everything. You all know Mrs. Kettlewood? Mrs. Patty Kettlewood. If you stand up and let everybody see you there, I don't have her on my list. You'll see as much of her as you will of anybody else this year, because she's going to be smiling and waving at you as you come by in the morning. She's the one that sits in our office, and she just about never misses a day. So I really appreciate her faithfulness. But she will be in the office this evening if you need to pay your bill, if you haven't given us the student fee or the August tuition yet, and then the September tuition will be posted. And again, we just take the year and divide it over 10 months is how that's figured. But remember, those are due by the 10th of the month, that there is a late fee, so please keep that in mind as you make your plans. All right, I want to talk about something kind of important here, because if we don't pay attention, there'll be chaos at the beginning of the school year. This is not to scale, and it's a little confusing, so I'll walk you through it. But this is the traffic pattern that I ask you to follow when you come in. We will have cones. We even have a new sign. Some of you might have seen it out in the parking lot, pushed off to the side. But we'll have it all set up to try to direct you. The first day of school, I can't be out in the parking lot because of other things. But the second day, weather permitting, I'll actually be in the parking lot. But what you want to do, you follow that black parent line. When you come in, you're immediately going to make a left and go all the way, as far as you can to the left. Listen, there's a parking spot right here. I want to jump into that spot. Don't come down this way. You're going to meet somebody. Even if there's a great spot that you could zip into right there, please don't. You want to just come down and then you can pull into any of these spots on this side, or loop and come back up to go to these spots. There's many more spots than I detailed to make this fit the PowerPoint screen. But obviously you want to pull in. The student parking, we only have about 4 or 5 upperclassmen, not even that many who drive. They don't take many spots. So we're just talking about pulling into these spots here. These spots will be actually roped off. I've had parents pull under the rope before. Please don't park there. Okay, now I know the first day I may have to manage some things just because there's a lot of people coming in, but please don't park in any of those spots. It will cause a problem when you try to get out, and you'll see what I mean on the first day of school. One of the things that we have, Mrs. Mean, help me out, maybe about 12 or 13 buses that come in the morning from area, how many? Oh my goodness, 18 buses that come in the morning. That's a lot of buses. They come straight in and come down. We have to block off these first few spots because for them to make their turn and to be able to do it safely, they need room there. You also don't want to be backing up right into a bus. If you don't know this, they don't stop for people. You've learned that, right? Buses own the road. I've driven school bus before. I understand a little bit of that as well. So you will just follow this black line, come around. There are also spots immediately in front here. Now, I know some of these spots are tempting. Let me explain to you so you understand the reason why we say no parking there. It's simply because to get out of those spots, you will have to back out. There are often children walking along here. And again, I know many cars today have the backup cameras. You don't want to be backing with a child coming immediately behind you. So this is why we block off these spots. By law, we have to leave the handicap spots open. Please don't park there unless you're handicapped. It's illegal for one. It's unsafe if you're trying to back out in there. And the hard part, it's pouring down rain. I just want to run my child in. Please don't. The rain is the worst part. About 3 years ago, we had a very near accident from a parent who did just that. It was a day that was pouring down rain, and she pulled into the handicap spot that we had to leave open. By law, we have to leave that open. She pulled into there to bring her kids in, and with such a hurry to pull out to work, she started backing up right as a bus was letting off some children. Please don't be that. You don't want to be in that situation. You don't want to put us in that situation. And if you are not the one, if there's like a friend of yours that's bringing your child, please share this with them. I will be emailing tomorrow or the next day the link to the YouTube of this. I'm also going to send a link to this on a PDF. So you can have a copy of exactly how to come in. You want to just, like I said, come in and make that hard left, go all the way to where the grass is and come around. If we all do that, it'll be a lot smoother, trust me. And what's going to happen in the winter, just so you know, there are going to be snowbanks all along here. And by the way, up here too, snowbanks. From where our plow puts them. And we understand this is something for me living in the South coming to the North. The snow doesn't go away. I mentioned before we started to a few people that I grew up in Maryland. We get some snow in Maryland, but it's gone by a week later normally. Here, the snow that falls in November is still here in March, right? So it doesn't go away. We have to push it out of the way. So there'll be lots of snow up there. We'll just try to come around that and keep visibility the best you can. If you have any questions about this, please see me or Mrs. Mean or one of the teachers, Mrs. Kettle Wood. We've all done this a lot. We can help you with it. And I say, as soon as I can, early in the school year, I'll be out there with my green vest, trying to keep people going where they're supposed to be. Have I explained that well enough, Mrs. Mean? All right, and please, in the parking lot, please drive slowly. You noticed you came in today, there's a posted speed limit of 5 miles an hour. I know 5 miles an hour is slow. I know that. I know many of you are trying to get to work afterwards. Here's the thing to realize. Even as you come in, there will be times when we have somebody like mowing the lawn or somebody shoveling snow that could be up there. Our pastor's driveway, that's his parsonage. You drove by on your way in. We want to keep it safe even up there. Please don't come tearing in here. Really, I really appreciate it if we can abide by that speed limit as you come in. Let me bring up, I have another thing here just about extended session. If you are using extended session and you're going to be here after 3:30, at 3:45 or so, Mrs. Kettle Wood's, the office closes, Mrs. Kettle Wood leaves theoretically around 3:45. That's the theory. It doesn't often happen that way, but that's the theory anyway, that she leaves at 3:45. So what happens, it's 4:15 and you need to get a message to your child, you're running late, these kind of things. Our extended session worker, generally Mrs. Rourke, is going to carry a school cell phone. I want to give you that number, but I want to tell you that number is only for, because she's watching students. Our teachers aren't allowed to use cell phones when they're watching students, except for that one school cell phone. So please keep it to a minimum. Only contact us, whether it's by text or voice, if you really need to. There's really something important that they need to know. But let me see. That number, if you're going to be here after 3:30 and you want to put that number in your phone somewhere, that phone, we're not going to answer it during the day. In fact, Mrs. Rourke will probably turn it off during the day. But if you call the office and don't get an answer at the office after about 3:45, and you need to get a hold of her, and this is not something to ask, what time is the program? It's not something to say, what's my child's snack? It's just this is something important in extended session, to get a message to the extended session staff. You're running later than you expected, your child's supposed to go home with somebody else that we're not expecting, things like that. That's what that contact number is for, that 536-4144 number. So again, if you want to put that in your cell phone, I'm going to have the extended session staff with some half-sheet flyers next week to send it home as well. So if you miss it tonight, it's okay. But that number, they'll be available again. And I don't know, I'm thinking, Mrs. Greaves, even the texting may not be the worst idea, because sometimes it's pretty hard to hear that phone in the gym. So feel free, if that works better, to send a text if you're running late or something like that they need to know. Now, I put on here as well about extended session. Please realize we close at 5:30. If something happens, if you're caught in traffic, have an alternate plan in mind. Have a neighbor, a coworker, a friend, somebody else at school that you know who can come and pick up your child. You have to pick up your children by 5:30. All right, I understand things come up, but understand for a couple things, we only have staffing until 5:30. That's what Mrs. Rourke is expecting to leave. And now we're never going to leave your child unattended. Don't worry about that. But there is a $1 a minute charge beyond 5:30. So if you're 10 minutes late, that is a $10 charge because of the late time. So you come at 5:40, that's $10. And it's also inconveniencing the extended, she may have plans with her family, she may have other things that she needs to do. So please realize our doors close at 5:30. We must have your child picked up by then. And so what I would say is, just in case you get stuck at work or something comes up, have a backup plan in mind. Have something you're even thinking of now if you're planning to use extended session. And please don't be the one that always comes at 5:30, because you know you're going to be late. It's going to happen. So I encourage you in that way. 5:30 is when we close. All right, I can take care of that now. We'll talk more about some of our programs we have. Let me just say one thing about some of our programs now. We want you to be able to enjoy the programs. And one of the things, if you have younger children that aren't in the program, we ask that during those programs, if they come with you, which is fine, that you keep them under control as part of it. We've had problems in some years with children literally running up on the stage during programs and parents thinking, oh, that's cute. Maybe it is, but we still don't really want it during the programs. So just a note, we'll talk more about programs as we get closer. Let me mention school banking. I mentioned earlier, Mrs. Deb Rourke is going to, is a volunteer in this sense who oversees our school banking program. This is a great way to set aside some savings for your child. It's done through Capcom Bank, if you're familiar with Credit Union, actually, if you're familiar with them. She has more information tonight. So if this is something you might be interested in, we will do it each Tuesday morning. Each Tuesday morning, your children could bring in as little as a penny, right? As little as a penny they could bring in. And it'll be a savings account that's set up. She has an application that she can give you for that. You can get it set up through us. It's just a great way to teach children the value of saving. And they'll get some special awards too. They get something the first time they bring something. First time they bring a money, and then every 5 after that, they get a special treat. Okay, right. It starts on September 16th. That Tuesday will be the first time we'll do it. So see her later if this is something you might be interested in. She's got brochures on it. It's kind of a neat little program. We like it. My family participates in it. I know Mrs. Mead's family does as well. Yes, ma'am. That's a good point. K4 and up, they say be proud of your report card. And they'll give you $10, and that's 4 times a year. And all you, oh.
They changed it
3 times a year. Okay, thank you. 3 times a year, and all you need to do is send a copy in with your child on Tuesday so she can bring it in to Capcom. Hey, free money. I mean, even if you close the account in 2 years, it's money. So we're trying to encourage our children to save, and if that's something that you think is no pressure on doing it, but if it's something you think is important to you, see Mrs. Rourke about that tonight. All right, let me talk and I'm getting close to, I'm going to turn this over to Mrs. Mean for a few minutes, but you all should have received this blue sheet in the mail about a month or 3 weeks ago maybe, in the mail. This says Statement of Understanding. This is something new we're trying this year just because we want to communicate better. I think there's been some misunderstandings about some things in past years. And so we're asking just to make sure we're all on the same page as we start the year. Now, we need each family to do one of these. I've already seen several out there in the audience that have them. I have more copies tonight. If you need to pick one up, they're actually in the back, or maybe I'll have Mrs. Kettle Wood pick some up and bring them to the office at the end. You can pick these up. I just want to quickly go through this. I'm not going to insult your intelligence by reading to you. I know you've already read it, but let me just highlight a couple things. As Mrs. Mean told you when she met with you, one of the requirements here, can everybody hear me okay? All right, one of the requirements here is that your child be completely potty trained. And I know when you met with Mrs. Mean, maybe your child wasn't, but you had hope to be here. Please be honest with us. If your child's not ready yet, come and tell us tonight, please. It's going to be a lot harder if we have to deal with you and you know whether or not your child is potty trained. All right, please understand, it must be to be a student here. And that we just can't. We don't have the facilities if your child is not yet potty trained. Your child cannot wear any type of diaper or pull-up ever, and that includes during nap time. It has to be able to wear regular underwear and must be like that. And so we understand, and I just want to make sure each of you understands why I ask you to initial that. Secondly, your child, part of being potty trained is being able to use the toilet unassisted. So, I mean, I understand every now and then there's going to be some, what do we call them now, wardrobe malfunctions. And there might be times, we're here to help. Okay, we're not saying, oh no, we're not going to help them. They can't get their pants buttoned. No, that's not at all what we're saying. But we can't be helping them for really, you understand today in today's culture, we can't be helping them go to the bathroom. That's not what, and we don't have the staffing level for that. We're just not equipped for it. So you have to be able to do that. And try to make sure your child has clothes. Mrs. Mean's going to talk about uniforms here in a minute. But just make sure your child has clothes that he or she can open and close on his own. And that really is important. The other thing about eating, your child does need to be able to eat completely unassisted. All right, understand that generally we will have one teacher supervising 15 to 20 kids. She can't go around and put a fork in your child's mouth. It just can't happen. So think about it. We're happy to open those Go-Gurt things. How many Go-Gurts have you opened in your career? We're happy to bring scissors by and clip them open. We're not talking about that. I'm not talking about every now and then. By the way, what are these things with thermoses? That if you put stuff in them hot in the morning, they will seal themselves. Anyway, just be aware of that. Here's the thing about the lunches, though. If your child is hungry, he will eat. We will give an adequate amount of time. We will make sure they are not distracted. But what they're not done, we're not going to punish them for it. If they're not done, we're going to send it back home. If it's appropriate to send home anyways, nothing that can be sent home. And you know what? Remember that kids have a snack. Don't send them huge amounts of food. They have a snack time. in the morning and in the afternoon if they're here all day. So I encourage you in that, but please don't ask us, oh, my child needs to be fed. We can't do that. Again, we don't have the facilities or the personnel for it. So understand that. And then the last thing on this statement of understanding, our school day starts at 8:20. We really need you here at 8:20. This is not a daycare where you can drop by at 9 o'clock, 9:30. It's incredibly disruptive to our students. So we need you here by 8:20 every day. If you come later than 8:20, you're going to have to drop your child off at the office. You will not be able to go into the classroom. That really creates a disruption. Oh, I have to carry my child's things. Then you need to be here before 8:20. All right, please understand that. Just imagine what a classroom is like. The K-4 teacher, Mrs. Greaves, for example, has 18 students this year right now? 18 students. She may have 16 of them in there, and then one comes in, has to talk to her, explain lunch to her, has to give her a note, has to hang up the coat. During this whole time, it's very difficult for Mrs. Greaves to teach those other kids that are in there. And they're paying for an education as well. So I really do need you to be here by 8:20 and then not pick your child up any earlier than 11:45 unless, again, something unusual, we totally understand. There's a doctor's appointment, something, there's an unusual schedule at your work. Trust me, no one's upset about that, but on a regular basis, no earlier than 11:45 you're picking them up. And if you do come earlier than 11:45, you go to Mrs. Kettle Wood in the office and she will make sure your child is brought to you. You won't go to the classroom before that time. Because obviously it causes a greater disruption if you go in than if one of us goes in. If you have any questions, again, see the teachers about that. But if you would initial and sign this form, and be sure to at least legibly write at least your child's name so we know we've gotten them all, you can give it to your child's teacher tonight. They're going to collect them and then we'll file them eventually. If you have multiple children, you only have to do this once. We're fine with that. If you need more, like say they're in the back, or maybe Mrs. Kettlewood, if you want to pick those up and bring them to the office when you go, there. I know Mrs. Urban has put out, and maybe all the other teachers as well, there's a couple of forms. We want to make sure we have the right contact information for you. So there's a couple forms you'll be seeing, whether tonight or next week at some point. There's a card that we call our emergency contact card, and then there's a sheet, a bunch of boxes, a big grid on it called a verification form. Please look over that and let us know if anything doesn't look right. I'll tell you that one of the most important things to have on that for us, though, is anybody who might pick up your child. When it comes to extended session or even the normal day, we are not going to send your child home with a stranger, even if it's somebody else in this room. We need to know that we have your permission. So anybody aside from mom and dad, we already know mom and dad's name. That was on the application. Anybody else, maybe you have a grandparent that might pick up your child, a next door neighbor. Would you please give us all of those names legibly on that card or that white sheet or both? I don't care, as long as we get it. Our extended session staff will have a sheet knowing who's authorized to pick them up. They will ask for photo ID until they get to know you and them. So please, if someone else is picking them up, give them the heads up. We're not trying to be mean, we're trying to protect your children. So we're gonna ask for a photo ID when you come by to pick them up until we get to know you, then it's fine. But anybody else who comes as well. So make sure that, and also just check things, if we need to call you, it's helpful if we have the right phone number. And so if you can make sure all that got put in the computer properly, that would be great. And then also there's a section on there for allergies and medications. Please let us know. It's very important. Along the line of allergies, I also know that some of you have special diets for your children, whether because of your cultural backgrounds or because of medical needs. It helps us if we know that. Even if you think it doesn't matter to us, it helps if we know. For example, if your child is a vegetarian or there's anything else that you don't want your child to eat, please just give a note to one of our teachers, put it on that card. Again, drop them a note, drop them an email. Be sure we know so that we can help make sure that your children have what you want them to have and not have what you don't want them to have. So please let us know. As far as medications, please remember our school policy. Hopefully you've seen this a little bit. If your child does, your child gets an ear infection over the course of the year, it has to be on some kind of amoxicillin or something that has to be taken during the day. We will do our best to accommodate that, of course. Medication, though, give it to Mrs. Kettlewood. Don't put it in your child's lunch. Please, we have that sometimes. If it needs to be refrigerated, we'll take care of that for you. But give it to Mrs. Kettlewood. Please be sure it's in the original prescription bottle with the child's name and with doctor's instructions. We need to know not just the way you think it should be administered, but the way your doctor says it is going to be administered. So please make sure we have that, and that's for everyone's safety and protection. So if that comes up over the course of the year, please make sure. And by the way, I mentioned earlier about pickups. I forgot to say, that may change. You may make a new friend. I hope you make several new friends out of people in this room. And maybe somebody else, you find out, hey, I live 3 doors down from you and never knew it. And now our children are at the same school. Just give Mrs. Kettlewood a call or send in a note. So-and-so is now authorized to pick my child up from school. Your signature at the bottom. We're happy to do it. We just want to know that you know where your children are. And that's what our goal is to do there. All right. Well, it's time to take a break from my voice. I think I've done everything I need to. Mrs. Mead's going to come up and talk about a couple of things as well.
I just have a few things to cover with you. First of all, snack. I know when I met with each of the parents, I asked that our snack be nutritious. And by nutritious, I mean no cupcakes, donuts, chips, cookies, things like that. Something that's very nutritious. For a lot of our children, they're used to getting up right now, especially when they want to get up. If you're a stay-home mom.
Excuse me, I think we're having some trouble hearing. If you can do anything to try to keep the children, I'm looking around and I see some people are really straining.
I'm sorry, I'm trying to talk loud. I'm not very loud. But when we talked before, we asked that it be nutritious. And so no cookies, cupcakes, things like that, except on their birthday. On their birthday, you can bring cupcakes, ice cream, whatever you want to bring. Some parents bring in pizza and whatever. You can do as little as much as you want on their birthday. But other than that, we ask that it's nutritious. And the reason for that is a lot of the children don't eat a good breakfast. And because of that, we want their first meal of the day or their snack to be very nutritious. So parents can, they can, like our Indian families, we love it when you make Indian food, especially as teachers. But you can bring goldfish, especially the little 3-year-olds, the goldfish and things like that at the beginning are good because it's something that they can handle, especially if mom's been feeding them and dad. So we do ask that it's completely nutritious juice and snack, and sufficient enough for the whole class that you have to bring, because you only have to bring it once a month for the whole class. And so we do ask that it's nutritious. For classroom birthdays, again, you can do as little as much as you want to with that. For dress code, first of all, that we ask that the children have Velcro sneakers. In fact, we do like sneakers because of the fact, and the dress shoes are beautiful and things, but it's not always safe because we're on the playground, we're in the gym, and because of that, we ask for sneakers because it's safer, and Velcro so the teachers aren't tying the sneakers all day long, and the children aren't tripping over them. A lot of the sneakers with their shoestrings, the children are tripping over them, the teachers are tying them. So just, if possible, Velcro. And the girls have to wear either white, blue, or black socks, stockings. They can wear leggings, but they have to be tight leggings. They can't be pants. But again, they also have to be blue, black, or white. We covered all this during our interview, but I just wanted to make sure of that. And so those are pretty much the things that I'm going to cover. Mr. Fry, you're going to come back up and we're going to show. Sure, right here. Okay. And I'll skip.
All right, just about done. Just a few more things. A couple notes about extended session. And remember, for us, extended session is anything beyond 11:45 is extended session. Bring coloring books. There's an example of one. We'll supply the crayons. But if you bring, that's one of the things we ask you to bring in. The kids will use it, and we want to have that available for them. So that's a good example of a good thick coloring book. Again, they're inexpensive to get, but they're just great tools for us to use in those in-between, those transition times to have. So we appreciate that. Please dress for outside. Understand it's going to be winter soon enough here. As much as we possibly can, we are going to go outside. So keep that in mind as you're dressing them as we get into those kind of transitional months, October, beginning of November or so. Give them, send them in with a jacket they could put on themselves easily enough. So we're going to go outside until the weather says really you can't. And it's not, trust me, we're not going out when it's 20 below. We're not going to do that. But we are going to go out when it's 40. All right, so please understand that as well. And we want the children to be comfortable, but it's amazing. They need to go out, they need the fresh air, so we're going to take them out. All right, I already said that. We will now, one note, this comes up every now and then in extended session. We will not sign your child out until you leave the playground. Oh, I want to leave my child a few minutes to play. Well, guess what? We still have to supervise then. So you're going to keep being charged. Please, when you come to pick them up, I don't want to be mean, rude, anything like that, but please take them when you pick them up. You're going to see we have a pretty big group to watch. Now, we'll have staffing, we'll have 3 or 4 teachers out there. We'll have plenty of teachers to watch them when they're outside or in the gym, but it's a lot of people. So come in, sign them out, take them home. It's time for all of you to go home at that point anyway. And then once you do sign them out, the one thing, this came up last year a little bit, please be responsible for your children. We have times, these kids are great, they're well behaved for us. Mom comes in, signs them out, and they go blitzing across the parking lot with cars coming. Okay, please watch your child, hold their hand, they're little, they're bumper level of cars. We don't want any bad things to happen. So hold your child's hand. Let's keep everybody safe in the parking lot. All right, let's talk about nap time a little bit here, and this is kind of Mrs. Mean is going to demonstrate something in a minute. We put children down for a nap around 1:30 or so, and they get up around 2:40, something like that. So they get about a little over an hour nap you each day. For this, each child will have a cot assigned to them. We didn't bring a cot up, did we? But we have a cot, a raised cot off the floor. They're actually pretty comfortable. They're a little small for me, but they work pretty well. In there. We do ask, though, that you bring a set of spare clothes. We understand even the best potty-trained child is going to have an accident every now and then. Okay, we almost expect that to happen. So, here's what we ask each of you to bring. This is, if I say Vanna White, y'all know what Vanna White is here? Sorry, I'm going to get hit. A 1-gallon size Ziploc bag. That's that size. And in that bag, with the child's name, we didn't illustrate that, the child's name clearly written on the outside. Big print, so we can find it, because we often have to find it quickly when we need it. So have your child's name written in large on there. In there, you need a complete uniform change. All right, I know you're like, oh, I don't have very many uniforms. I've got an answer for that in a minute. But you want to have a complete uniform in there, because they can't change into other clothes. If there's an accident, they have to put another uniform on. And of course, some parents forget kind of the obvious, and that's undergarments. Be sure to send in, you have to have a pair of underwear in there for if they have an accident, they're going to need that. So just keep that in mind, a complete change of clothes. Yes?
Even down to a little pair of shoes, because a lot of times when it happens, they're standing.
Yeah.
And so a lot of things they don't think of is their shoes, because if their shoes get wet, we don't want to put them back on their feet. So socks, shoes, everything. And just one other thing that doesn't have to do with this, but your child can purchase a sweater at lodges, and please make sure that it's labeled on the back of the neck, or there's a tag on the side. If I find a sweater, if we find it in the playground, if we find it in the gym, we find it in the hall, anywhere, if it has a name, I won't put it in the lost and found. I usually put it in my office or behind my door in my classroom. But if it has a name on it, that way I can give it to your child immediately. Right. So just please, just their first name and last initial, especially the last initial too, because we have some double names here. Mm-hmm. So please just label any sweaters that you bring in.
Because those sweaters, obviously, they're a uniform sweater, and so there's a lot of them. At the end of the year, we end up with about 10 of them or so, usually left and lost and found. And by the way, if you do lose something, see Mrs. Kettle Wood. She can show you where lost and found is. I'm going to talk more about some of that in a minute.
One other thing is, one of the reasons we want your child to be in uniform is we try to do it as discreetly as possible, so your child's not embarrassed. So we take them to the restroom, we change them, and they're right back in the same uniform that they were in, so nobody really has to know that they had an accident. So it's very important that we have the uniform, not anything else, just the uniform.
And you think about it, we don't want your child to be embarrassed that there was an accident, because we understand that. And if they're wearing another set of clothes, it's going to kind of mark them that happened. All right, one more thing Mrs. Mean is going to show is for nap time, we ask you to bring in 1 blanket. We don't want a sleeping bag. We don't want an industrial size blanket either. You have the example there for me.
Actually, this size right here is perfect.
Okay.
Now, this one's bigger than what we really want, but and actually this is not bad, because of the fact that we like to put half of it under them and then cover them with the other half so that they're a little bit more comfortable. So this, not heavy. No sleeping bags, not any heavier than this.
And we send that home every Friday with you to be washed. The extended session staff will send it home on Friday, or if there's an accident or something, obviously we'll send it home sooner. But you'll get it every Friday. Please don't forget on Monday to send it back. That happens every now and then, that we end up with a child with no blanket on Monday. So please remember that. Okay, a couple of things. Mrs. Mean explained to you during the meeting about hot lunches. We're not going to have any hot lunches next week, the first week of school. We will get information to you on that, however. All right, Mrs. Mean or teachers, is there anything I didn't cover that I should? I've got everything on my list at least. So I want to go ahead and dismiss just the teachers for a minute. Go ahead and head to the classroom area. And let me go through a few announcements for the rest of you. I mentioned before, each of the teachers will have bins in the hallway outside of the classroom if you brought school supplies. If you didn't, don't worry about it. You can bring them on a Wednesday. But if you already have them and want to drop them off down by the classrooms, you can do that. However, we don't really have the classrooms open at this point. This was the teacher's first day of work was today. So they're still getting everything ready. And so we're asking you not to come in and inundate the classroom. And also, when it comes to the teachers, please greet the teachers, say hi to them. If you need an extended meeting about something, though, please make an appointment with them. They'll be happy to do it. But please make an appointment with them. Tonight's not the time for a long meeting with them. You know what? You're ready to go home after all this information. They've been at work all day today, and they have to be at work at 8:30 tomorrow morning again here. So we don't want to keep them here real late either. So in about 20 minutes, I'm going to go through, say, hey, let's head home, everybody, if there's anybody still here. Go down, drop off the supplies, ask any questions you have of the teacher. But if it's anything lengthy, just set up an appointment. The other thing, I mentioned before about clothes. Often at the end of a year, parents will give us their lightly used clothing that didn't wear out or break. We're happy for you to take that. In our library, it's by Mrs. Mean's classroom. Just head down there. We'll show you if you don't know where that is. We have clothes set out. Please take what you can use. It's there for you. But please only take what you can use. Don't take the whole stack and think, oh yeah, this is exactly what I want for everybody. What's wrong? Okay, let me point that out too. Okay. So we appreciate that if you'd help us in that area. Mrs. Greaves' point, there were just enough packets out there for the number of families we have, so there's only one per family, and you should have either taken K4A or K4B, not both. So if you have the wrong one, if you would put it back out, there are class lists out there, but she said that apparently people have been taking more than they're supposed to in the packets. It's one per family and just either K4A or K4B. K3, you should have already gotten one for Mrs. Mansfield, or you will when you meet with her. She'll have her packet. Okay, so again, if you just go put it back. If you took an extra one, because we had just enough out there, I might have been one extra, I think, but we want to make sure it's one per family and just that right K4A or K4B. Let's say stop by the library when we dismissed here in a minute. The class lists are out there if you have any questions. I think I'm done. I'll be around too to answer questions. Mrs. Kettlewood's in the office. Mrs. Mean is by her classroom, so we're available. Again, I apologize for the drink from a fire hose. I know it's a lot of information in a short amount of time. Thank you for your patience. And kids here, you've been pretty good. Thank you for your patience. I know it's not easy to sit for 40 minutes and listen to grown-ups talk. Thank you, I appreciate it. And again, thank you all so much for the privilege of entrusting your children to us. We take that responsibility very seriously, and we are eager to have a good year of learning together. And we certainly look for God's richest blessings on this year. Again, thank you very much. You are dismissed. We are done.